If a woman was pregnant and they said to her, "What is the nature of this fetus?" And she replied, "He was fathered by so and so, and he is a Kohen." Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer said,
Stop. That was Chazara from yesterday. Let's go to base.
"Oh." And Rabbi Yeshua admits that if one says to another, "This field was your father's, and I bought it from him," and that he is believed, for the one that created the liability is the one that undid it. If, however, there are witnesses and that it was his father's, and he says, "I bought it from him," he is not believed. If witnesses said, "This is our handwriting,"
I just want to make sure that we've got the principle of the Pesha Aser or Pesha Hitir is fundamentally that if a person comes with a claim, it would normally not be believed on this claim. If a person just says, if he just walks into a Yoresh who's got a field, and he says, "You know that your father sold me this field," the rest is going to say to him, "Prove to me. Like, what are you walking in and telling me this that this is yours? It's nonsense. I don't believe you." And no court will believe him unless he's going to start.
right?
However, if the guy walks into the Shiva house and says says to the Yoresh, says, "Look, I'm sorry, Baruch your father passed away." He says, "Do you know that the fields at such and such a location by the old windmill?" And the guy says, "Yeah, but I know that field." Yeah, he says, that actually was originally your father's. And the Yoresh says, "Yes, really?" And he says, "Yeah, but he sold it to me." So now the Yoresh can't get up and say, "But hey, give me the star," because he wouldn't have known that it was his field if the claimant hadn't said hadn't told him that this used to be his father's field. And now the claimant is saying, "It used to be your father's field, but he sold it to me." So that's the Pesha Aser or Pesha Hitir. The same person is giving you the information that's both the Kula and the Chumrah, and therefore he's believed in both.
But why can't he ask for the star? Why can't he say, "I need to see something"?
That's exactly the chiddush of the Pesha Aser or Pesha Hitir, is that he had no idea, is that he didn't even think it was his field in the first place. And so the person the claimant, the guy who's saying it's mine, has got a migo. He says, "Listen, if I was lying, I could have just shut up. I could have said absolutely nothing and carried on farming that field, and you would have been none the wiser, right? So when I come and say to you that this is my field, believe me, because I could have just kept quiet and it would have been my field as well. So why should I lie about something when I could have just got away with not saying anything?" I think that's the main principle of the Pesha Aser or Pesha Hitir. Okay, but on the other hand, if he's coming and if he comes into the room just after two other guys have walked in and said, "You know that field by the windmill, that used to be your father's," and the guy says, "Yes, it used to be his, but he gave it to me, he sold it to me." So then it doesn't work anymore, because now he's coming and claiming something that we already knew through other witnesses. Okay, so that's where it doesn't work, and you see that it's the same pattern in all of the Pesha Aser, Pesha Hitir cases that we're going to see in the Mishnahs.
If witnesses said, "This is our handwriting, but we were coerced," or "We were minors," or "We were unfit for testimony," they are believed. If, however, there are witnesses that it is their handwriting, or if their handwriting is verified from another source, they are not believed.
So once again, that's another case of Pesha Aser or Pesha Hitir. If they're coming and giving you all the information that you need, both the Kula and Chumrah, then you believe them. But if you already knew that it was their signatures from somewhere else, then you can't believe them to undo their signatures, to say, "Oh, but we were forced." Sorry, you've got your signatures, then we know those are your signatures, and unfortunately we don't let witnesses come and say that our signatures were forced.
Yeah.
So you'd need to have third-party witnesses to come and say that they were forced.
If this one says, "This is my handwriting," and this is the other's handwriting, and this one says, "This is my handwriting," and this is the other's handwriting, they are believed. If this one says, "This is my handwriting," and this one says, "This is my handwriting," they must join to themselves to another person. These are the words of Rebbe. So come and say, however, that they need not join another person to themselves. Rather, a person is believed to say, "This is my handwriting."
Right. So that's the interesting nature of a star, is that the signature itself is the witness. And the fact that a person is coming and saying that, yeah, that's my signature, you don't need two people to testify that that's my signature. That's my signature. And he can, so he can say that even if he's just one witness on the fact that it's his signature. And that, except according to Rebbe, who holds that no, you need verification also to be by two people.
Right.
So anyway, the halacha follows the chachamim.
It reminds us when you were saying this, and as I was reading it also back, it's like when you have to go get a notary for something. You sign something, you can't just walk in and say, this is my signature. You need some kind of proof on the side that someone saw identification or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Same kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay. This is yours.
So a woman walks into town. She's been unheard of, and they want to know. So somebody wants to make a shidduch. What's your status? And she says, "Oh, I was married, but now I'm divorced." Now, if she just walked in and we'd known that she was married, and she came back from overseas and said, "I'm divorced," we'd say to her, "Where's your get?" So we wouldn't have believed her. But again, it's a pesha who a pesha hitter. She's giving us all the information we need. If she wanted to lie, she could have just kept quiet. But instead, she told us she was married, and now she's telling us that she's divorced. We believe her. However, if there were witnesses before who told us that she was married, then she's not believed when we tell her when she tells us that she's divorced. Amra nishbasi utoharani. If she comes and tells us, I was kidnapped, but I wasn't violated. Okay, okay, we believe it. If she wanted to lie, she could have just kept quiet. Okay. However, if there are witnesses that she was kidnapped, then she's not believed when she comes and tells about herself that she was not violated. And what happens if this woman comes, she does a pesha asa, a pesha hitter, and now she marries a kohen? And then later, witnesses come and say, "Hey, how come you married to a kohen? We saw that you were kidnapped." We say, "Go away. We don't want to hear your testimony." She was married beheter, and it's not like kidnapping is not a vadai that she was violated. It's a presumption, and that's why we don't allow her to marry the kohen. Once we've given her the heter to marry the kohen, we don't go and say, okay, now that she's married to, she must be a zona, and therefore the kohen must divorce her. No, we don't say that. So go away. We don't want to hear your testimony.
I think we had in a Mishna that if she was captured by non-Jews, that she's more considered to be violated than by Jews. Right.
Absolutely. This is all talking about non-Jews.
Right.
All talking about non-Jews that they're presumed to want to violate her. And so she comes and says, I was kidnapped and Tahora, then we believe her. She's allowed to marry the kohen, and we don't. And even if witnesses later come and tell us that she was kidnapped, we let them stay married. Okay. Now you have two women who were both kidnapped. So each of them, so we had witnesses. What's not written explicitly in the Mishna is over here. This is a case where there were witnesses that they were kidnapped. And they come back, and each one comes and testifies on herself that she was not violated. And sorry, ladies, your testimony on yourself is not good enough to permit you to marry a kohen now. However, if they testify to each other, so you have two women now, one herself and her co-captive, testify on each other that they were not violated. We believe them. So even though it's a case where you might say, okay, shouldn't we suspect Gomlin? Like they're doing each other favors so that they're both allowed to marry Kohanim. Maybe they both lie for each other. But nonetheless, the bottom line is that she's we trust the two witnesses, and we make it to believe them even though there's a possibility of Gomlin. Okay. Mishna Zayin, v'chein shnei anashim, two men, ze omer kohen ani, v'ze omer kohen ani. So two guys walk into town and we've never heard of them before, and they say each one says, I'm a Kohen, and they walk to the threshing floor and say, give us truma, please. I'll say to him, who the heck are you? We prove that you're a Kohen, and then we'll give you truma. Okay, so that's not good enough. But but if they come and say, listen, we're both Kohanim. We used to collect in the old town where we came from. We know each other. We're both Kohanim. Once again, they believed, even though there's a possibility of gomlin, of trading testimony for each other so that they can come and take truma. No, we believe them because they're testifying for each other, not just on themselves. Okay, let's go. Okay, Tesvav, yeah, Tesvav Ches.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I'm sorry?
Yevamos, Tesvav Ches.
Oh, that's what I thought. Well, if a woman said, I was granted a son overseas, and she added, my son died and then my husband died, she is believed. If she said, my husband died and then my son died, she is not believed. However, we consider her statement and she must therefore perform katlitza, but not yibum. If a woman said, I was given a yavam overseas, and then she added, my husband died and then my yavam.
I got confused between the cases. You skipped Mishna Ches. Can you just go back to do Mishna Ches? You did test. They're very similar wording. So
I did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If a woman went overseas and with her husband and son, and then she came and said, my husband died and then my son died, she is believed. But if she said, my son died and then my husband died, she is not believed. However, we consider her statement and she must perform chalitza, but not yibum.
And now you can go back to Yod.
Okay, what was the difference? What did we say was the difference was that the son died?
Whether she went overseas with her husband and son, and the second time is she went overseas with just her husband, and she comes back and claims that a son was born to her overseas. So there's a difference. There's a chazaka of what was when she left. So we assume so we were relying on her testimony to say that her son was born and the husband died or whatever.
If a woman said, I was given a yavam overseas, and then she added, my husband died and then my yavam, or my yavam died and then my husband, or she is believed. And if she and her husband and her yavam went overseas and she said, my husband died and then my yavam, or my yavam died and then my husband, she is not believed, because a woman is not believed.
Yeah.
The woman is not believed to say that a yavam died so that she may marry, and then her sister died so that she may enter his household. Nor is a man believed to say that his brother died so that he performs yibum with his wife, or that his wife died so that he may marry her sister.
Yeah. So all of this testimony of coming back with one person testifying that somebody has died is the only time it's permitted is for a woman's husband to allow her to remarry. That's it. We don't. That's the only exception to the rule that you need two kosher witnesses to testify about somebody's death is specifically to allow a woman to remarry on the death of her husband.
Right.
Okay. Right, back to Dalet Hay.
The commandment is for the eldest to perform yibum. If he was unwilling to do so, we approach all the other brothers. If they were unwilling to return to the eldest and say to him, the mitzvah is incumbent upon you, perform either chalitza or yibum. If he deferred to a minor until he becomes of age, or to the eldest until he arrives from overseas, or to a deaf mute, or to an idiot, we do not listen to him. But we may say to him, the mitzvah is incumbent upon you, perform either chalitza or yibum. One who performs chalitza with his yavama remains equal to the other brothers with respect to the inheritance. If there is a father, the estate belongs to the father. One who marries his yavama gains ownership of his brother's estate. Rabbi Yehuda says, in any case, if there is a father, the estate belongs to the father. And one who performs chalitza with his yavama is forbidden to marry her relatives, and she is forbidden to marry his. He is forbidden to her mother's mother, father's mother, daughter's daughter, son's daughter, and to her sister during her lifetime. The brothers, however, are permitted. She is forbidden to his father and the father's father, the son's son, brother and brother's son. A man is permitted to marry the relative of a Kalutza's wife, co-wife, but is forbidden to marry the co-wife of a Kalutza's relative. Okay. If one performed Kalutza with his Yavama, and then his brother married.
We're done there.
We finished, I thought so. Okay.
Okay, we're into Sukkah. Aleph Gimel.
If one spread a sheet over the skak because of the sun, or beneath it because of the falling leaves, or if one spread it over a four-poster bed, it is invalid. However, one may spread it over a two-poster bed. If one raised it onto a grapevine, a gourd, an ivy, covered it with skak, it is invalid. But if the skak exceeded them, or if he had detached them, it's valid. And this is the rule regarding the validity of skak. Whatever is susceptible to contamination or does not grow from the ground, we may not use for skak. But whatever is not susceptible to contamination and grows from the ground, we may use for skak. Bundles of straw, bundles of wood, or bundles of fresh cane may not be used for skak. But all of these are valid when they are untied, and all of them are valid for the walls.
Okay, Trumas, Hey Aleph.
Oops, sorry. Went the wrong way. If a saw of unclean truma fell into less than 100 of chulin, or into Maisa Rishon, into Maisa Sheni, or into hallowed produce, whether unclean or clean, they must be left to rot. Now this is Meduma now, right?
No, it's not. That's not called Meduma. That's called. This is now Tame. It's not. It's not.
Sort of unclean truma fell into less than 100 of chulin, or into a Maisa Rishon, or Maisa Sheni. All right, I thought it was.
You're talking about Dinei Bittul, but the Bittul is not just because of because of the fact that the truma outweighs the chulin, because it's more than 1 in 100, but also because truma tame nobody's allowed to eat. You leave it to rot, or you give it to Kohen and compete it to his animals, fine. But so nobody can do anything with tame truma other than feeding Kohen's animals.
If the saw was clean, it must be sold to priests at the price of truma, including the value of that saw. If it fell into Maisa Rishon, he must designate it Truma Maisa. If it fell into a Maisa Sheni or hallowed produce, it must be redeemed. And if the chulin was unclean, it may be eaten in small cakes or roasted or kneaded with fruit juice or divided among pieces of dough, so that in no single place should there be an egg's bulk. If a saw of unclean truma fell into 100 of clean chulin, Rebbe Eliezer says truma must be taken and burnt. For I say the saw which fell into it is the saw which came up. But if we come and say it is nullified, it should be eaten in small cakes or roasted or kneaded with fruit juice or divided among pieces of dough, so that in no single place should there be an egg's bulk. And if a saw of clean truma fell into 100, onto 100 of unclean chulin, it is neutralized and should be eaten in small cakes or roasted or kneaded with fruit juice or divided among pieces of dough, so that in no single place should there be an egg's bulk. So we don't want to go. The egg's bulk would be going over the shear, and we don't want to have that. Am I correct?
Right. The egg's bulk is what is the amount that can contaminate, contract truma.
Right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Ohalos Vavav.
Okay. A wall that resulted from excavation is ruled as a garlic. I'm sorry, is ruled as a garlic field. No?
Shamish is a kotel. It's a house that serves the wall. Yeah.
This says a wall that was resulted from. This says a wall that was resulted from excavation is ruled as a garlic field.
Oh, okay, fine.
Right. How so? There is a wall between two recesses or between two underground chambers. If truma is in the open areas of the catacomb and there are utensils in the wall that are covered very thinly, or the utensils remain tahor. If truma is in the wall covered very thinly, and the open areas there are utensils, the utensils remain tahor. If tuma is underneath a pillar, tuma penetrates upward and downward. Utensils that are beneath the capital remain tahor, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nori declares them tameh. In a case where the tumor and the utensils are beneath the capital, if there is a space of a handbreadth, utensils are tameh. If not, they remain tahor. And two wall closets are one beside the other, or one above the other. One of the closets is open; it becomes tameh, and so does the house, while the other closet remains tahor. However, if the door is closed, the wall closets are treated as if they are and no empty space inside them at all, and they are ruled half and half to make the house tameh. If tuma is within a wall inside a space that is a cubed handbreadth, every story above it becomes tameh, even if there are 10 stories. If an upper story is built over two houses and there is tuma in the wall between the two houses, it becomes tameh, but all the stories above it remain tahor. And if there is tuma inside a dike, it penetrates directly upward and downward. If a tombstone is on top of an occluded grave, someone who touches its sides remains tahor, because the tuma penetrates only upward and downward. But if the place of the tuma contains a cubed handbreadth or of empty space, one who touches any part of the tombstone becomes tameh, because it is treated as a sealed grave. If huts were leaned against it, they become tameh, and Rabbi Yehuda declares them tahor.
Yes. Talking about the chumras of Beis Hillel and the kulas of Beis Shammai. Dalet Gimel.
Beis Shammai says, produce declared ownerless for the poor becomes ownerless. But Beis Hillel says it is not ownerless unless it is declared ownerless with respect to the rich as well, as is the case with Shemitah. If all the sheaves of the field are each the size of one kav and one is the size of 4 kavs, and he forgot the large sheaf, Beit Shammai says that it is not treated as shichacha, but Beis Hillel says that it is shichacha. If a sheaf is close to a wall, to a stack of grain, to cattle, or to implements, and he forgot it, Beit Shammai says it is not treated as shichacha, but Beis Hillel says it is shichacha. The fourth year produce of a vineyard, Beis Shammai says it is subject neither to the law of fifth nor to the law of removal, but Beis Hillel says it is subject to the law of fifth and to the law of removal. Beit Shammai says its fourth year produce is subject to the law of peret and oleos, and the poor people must redeem it for themselves, but Beis Hillel says all of it goes to the owner's wine press.
Okay, I'd come.
Oh, good.